The sound of the gavel echoed through the courtroom, followed by a tense silence that enveloped everyone present. Riley Carter, a 16-year-old girl with wavy black hair and sharp eyes, sat quietly in the defendant's seat. The oversized orange jumpsuit hung loosely on her thin frame, but it wasn't the uniform that stood out the most. It was her eyes. Eyes that refused to show fear, despite the entire room expecting her to break. In front of her, Judge Warren Hale, a middle-aged man with a face lined with wrinkles, but still exuding authority, leaned back in his chair. His piercing gaze carried both contempt and challenge. He tapped his fingers lightly on the wooden desk, clearly enjoying the situation. "All right, Miss Carter, let's play a little game," his voice rang out, smooth but laced with mockery. "It's called Truth or Lie. I'll say something, and you'll have to tell me whether it's the truth or just a lie. Sounds simple enough, doesn't it?" Riley tilted her head slightly but didn't answer right away. She knew this wasn't just a game. It was a trap. A trap designed by the judge to make her lose control, to make her feel small, weak, and desperate under the scrutiny of the crowd. Whispers spread across the courtroom. Some reporters scribbled notes, cameras flashed continuously. On the jury bench, a few members exchanged doubtful glances, while officers at the back row smirked, as if they already knew the outcome of this trial. Judge Hale cleared his throat, cutting through the tension. He raised a hand, signaling for silence before turning his attention back to Riley. "The law guarantees a fair trial for every citizen. Truth or lie?" Riley held his gaze unblinking. A long silence stretched out as if time itself had frozen. Then she smirked, her voice steady and clear. "Lie." A second later, the courtroom erupted in murmurs and hushed laughter. Some jurors raised their eyebrows, while a few reporters nodded quietly, noting down every word from the 16-year-old girl. Judge Hale's brow furrowed slightly, but he quickly regained his composed demeanor. He rested his elbows on the desk, intertwining his fingers, and smirked. "Really?" he repeated slowly, his tone challenging. "You truly believe the Constitution doesn't guarantee a fair trial?" Riley lifted her chin slightly. "It guarantees it on paper," she said calmly, "but it doesn't guarantee it in practice. A system can be written with beautiful words, but it doesn't function fairly when those who enforce it are corrupt." Riley's words plunged the courtroom into a heavy silence. A few people in the back pressed their lips together, while the prosecutors exchanged irritated glances. Judge Hale's smirk widened slightly, as if entertained. "Next," he continued, unwilling to give Riley time to dwell on her words. "The justice system treats everyone equally, regardless of race or background. Truth or lie?" Riley let out a small laugh. She knew exactly what he was doing. "Lie?" she answered without hesitation. A few people in the room inhaled sharply. Hale slowly crossed his arms, his smirk still in place. "And why do you think that?" Riley took a deep breath, then spoke clearly, emphasizing each word. "Because if that were true, I wouldn't be sitting here right now." A deathly silence fell over the room. Judge Hale paused, the smile on his face momentarily stiffening. Riley had just turned his question into an accusation. All eyes were on her. Some people looked convinced, while a few jurors cleared their throats. Riley's confidence didn't resemble that of a guilty person. The prosecutor, a blonde woman named Eleanor Fielding, quickly broke the tension. "Your Honor, we are here to discuss evidence, not to hear a political lecture." Riley turned to look at her. "I'd love to discuss the evidence," she said, her voice dripping with sarcasm. "But it seems that the evidence in my favor has mysteriously disappeared from the system." Fielding's body stiffened. A few jurors exchanged glances. Judge Hale rubbed his temple, exhaling slowly. He had expected Riley to falter, to stammer, or at the very least show fear. But she wasn't. She was controlling the game. Before he could continue, the courtroom doors suddenly swung open. Everyone turned. A tall, authoritative-looking man in a gray suit strode forward, holding a thick file in his hands. "Your Honor, we have new evidence." The room exploded with chatter. Riley narrowed her eyes, trying to get a clear look at the man who had just entered. She didn't recognize him. "And who are you?" Judge Hale asked coldly. The man looked up, his sharp gaze sweeping across the room. "My name is Dominic Reeves. I am Riley Carter's new attorney, and this file might just change everything in this case." Riley's eyes widened slightly. A new lawyer? She had never met this man before. But that didn't matter. What mattered was everything was about to change. The entire courtroom fell silent as Dominic Reeves strode forward, slamming the thick file onto the judge's desk. The lawyer, clad in a sharp gray suit, exuded an air of authority, his cold, piercing eyes unwavering under the weight of the scrutinizing gazes fixed upon him. Judge Warren Hale narrowed his eyes, clearly displeased by the disruption. He tapped his fingers lightly on the wooden desk, feigning composure. "Attorney Reeves," he said, emphasizing each word. "What exactly is so special about this file?" Dominic opened the folder, pulling out a single sheet of paper and holding it up. "This is surveillance footage from the community center's security cameras, the location where Riley Carter was present at the time of the robbery. This evidence proves that she could not have been at the crime scene as alleged." A wave of murmurs spread across the room. Reporters scribbled furiously, and members of the jury exchanged skeptical glances. Riley clenched her fists, struggling to suppress her shock. Security footage? But the police had insisted that no such recordings existed. "This is absurd," Prosecutor Eleanor Fielding interjected, attempting to regain control. "We thoroughly reviewed all surveillance footage. There was no video evidence of the defendant at the community center that afternoon." Dominic narrowed his eyes, a smirk playing on his lips. "Then perhaps you can explain why this data was erased from the police department system?" The atmosphere in the courtroom grew taut, tension coiling like a spring. Prosecutor Fielding stiffened but quickly masked her unease. "I have no information regarding that," she admitted, her voice dry. Riley scanned the room. Someone had deliberately hidden this evidence. And now, the truth was beginning to surface. Judge Hale leaned forward, his initial confidence visibly shaken. He glanced toward Prosecutor Fielding before inhaling deeply. "The court will review this evidence," he announced. "For now, the trial is adjourned for further investigation." For the first time since this case began, Riley felt a glimmer of hope, but what she didn't know was that danger was still lurking in the shadows. After the trial was temporarily postponed, Riley was taken back to the prison to await further investigation. She sat on the cold iron bed, her mind spinning with thoughts. If Dominic had found that video, it meant someone had deliberately hidden it. But who? And why were they so determined to have her convicted at all costs? She didn't have much time to ponder when the sudden blare of an alarm echoed through the hallway. Riley sprang to her feet immediately. Something was wrong. Shouts and the frantic pounding of footsteps reverberated through the prison block. Other inmates stirred, pressing themselves against the bars to get a glimpse of what was happening outside. Panicked voices rang out. "What the hell is going on? Someone's attacking the prison. Where are the guards?" Riley's heart pounded. An attack on the prison? But who? At that moment, an explosion erupted at the end of the corridor. A blinding flash tore through the space, shaking everything violently. Smoke and dust engulfed the area. A group of figures clad in black, wearing gas masks, stormed in, weapons raised and ready. Riley stepped back, instantly realizing they weren't the police, nor a rescue team. They were here to kill her. One of the mercenaries pulled out his gun and aimed it directly at Riley. "Finish her off. We don't have much time," he ordered. Riley was tied up in the cell, completely defenseless. She held her breath, trying to think fast. Just before the mercenary could pull the trigger, a shadow darted in from behind, swift as lightning, taking him down with a single strike to the neck. Riley's eyes widened. The newcomer wore a black leather jacket, his sharp gaze flashing under the flickering lights. He wasn't wearing a mask, and the moment Riley saw his face clearly, she froze. "Hello, Riley." His voice was rough, low. "It's been a while." Riley shook her head, unable to believe what she was seeing. "No way. Caleb?" Her brother. The one who had vanished 4 years ago. The one she thought was dead. Caleb didn't waste time on explanations. He pulled a key from his pocket and unlocked Riley's cell in less than 3 seconds. "No time to be shocked," he said, yanking her out. "If we don't leave now, you'll be dead before you even understand what's happening." Riley barely had time to react before a hail of gunfire tore through the hallway. Caleb shoved her down, pressing into a corner as bullets whizzed past them. "Follow me?" Caleb ordered before charging ahead. Riley had no choice but to follow her brother, the brother she thought was long gone. They ran through the fiery corridors, dodging assassins still in pursuit. Other prisoners seized the chaos as an opportunity to escape, making the scene even more chaotic. As they reached the emergency exit, a mercenary blocked their path, gun aimed at Caleb. Riley moved before she could think. She grabbed a fire extinguisher from the wall and smashed it into his head. The mercenary collapsed instantly. Caleb raised an eyebrow but had no time for praise. He grabbed Riley's hand and pulled her outside. A black truck was waiting just beyond the prison gates. The door swung open, and a familiar voice called out, "Hurry up! Get in!" Riley recognized the voice immediately. Dominic. Without hesitation, both of them jumped in. The door slammed shut, and the vehicle sped off, leaving behind fire and the blaring alarms. Riley's heart pounded as she turned to Caleb. You're alive?" Caleb looked at her, his expression serious. "I'll explain everything. But first," his gaze locked onto hers. "Do you want to take down Calloway?" Riley clenched her fists. She was no longer a victim. She was a warrior. The truck sped down the highway, leaving behind the flashing red lights of the prison alarms. Riley sat huddled in the corner of the vehicle, her hands still trembling from the adrenaline. She still hadn't fully processed the fact that Caleb, the brother who had disappeared 4 years ago, was sitting right beside her. Caleb remained silent for the first few minutes. He pulled a small knife from his jacket pocket and slowly cut the restraints off Riley's wrists. As the bindings fell to the floor, Riley rubbed her wrists, feeling the lingering warmth on her skin. She stared at him, waiting for an explanation. From the front seat, Dominic glanced at them through the rearview mirror. "We have 10 minutes before the police lock down the roads. I've secured a safe house, but we need to move fast." Caleb nodded but kept his gaze fixed on Riley. He studied her for a moment before taking a deep breath. "I know you have a lot of questions," he said, his voice calm but rougher than she remembered. "But we need to get somewhere safe first. Then I'll explain everything." Riley clenched her fists. She wanted to scream at him, to demand why he had vanished, why he never came back, why she had spent years believing she was the last one left in their family. But instead, she gritted her teeth and gave a single nod. She could wait. Because right now, there was something far more important to do. Taking down Victor Calloway. After nearly an hour of driving, Dominic led the group to an old warehouse on the outskirts of the city. The rusted metal doors creaked open, revealing a spacious yet well-equipped hideout. Computers, surveillance monitors, scattered documents across the tables. It looked like a fully operational underground command center. Waiting for them inside was Diane, an independent investigator and hacker. She was a woman in her early 30s, dressed in a leather jacket, her short hair framing piercing eyes that carried the weight of someone who had seen the darkest sides of the world. "Welcome to the home of the nameless," Diane said, crossing her arms as she eyed Riley. "Not bad seeing you still alive." Riley raised an eyebrow. "You know me?" Diane shrugged. "We've been watching your case for a while. When Calloway set his sights on you, I knew this wasn't just some ordinary trial." Caleb stepped up to a large table where a laptop was already open, displaying multiple files. "I've been collecting these documents for the past 4 years," he said, flipping through several folders. "Everything on Calloway, his shady transactions, bribes, wrongful convictions he orchestrated to protect his network." Riley frowned, leaning over to look at the screen. Emails, messages, and images filled the display. Damning evidence of Calloway bribing officials, framing innocent people, and even ordering assassinations to silence his enemies. She felt her blood boil. "Our mother," Caleb spoke slowly. "She uncovered this evidence, and that's why she was killed." Riley froze. "What?" Caleb turned the laptop screen toward her, showing a document marked with various notes. "Mom was investigating Calloway before she was murdered. She had enough proof to take him down, but just days before she could release it, she died in a car accident." His jaw tightened. But it wasn't an accident. It was an assassination. A chill ran through Riley's body. Their mother had always distrusted the justice system. She had taught Riley that justice wasn't something that existed naturally. It had to be fought for. And now, Riley realized that their mother had fought until her last breath to expose the truth, only to be silenced for it. "Calloway has manipulated this system for too long," Diane said, her fingers gliding over the keyboard. "But the problem is, he's too powerful. If we just dump this evidence online, He'll find a way to bury it before it spreads. Dominic folded his arms, deep in thought. So how do we make sure he can't erase it? Caleb smirked, a dangerous glint in his eyes. We're not just going to release the evidence. We're going to destroy him in front of the whole world. Riley looked at him, her heart pounding. What do you mean? Caleb pulled out a large board displaying a city map with a series of images. He pointed to a grand building. Callaway is hosting a charity gala tomorrow, Caleb explained. A massive event with politicians, judges, high-ranking police officials. Every major player tied to him will be there. Diane tapped her fingers against her computer screen. Security at that venue is airtight. No one gets in without a VIP invitation. Dominic turned to Riley. But we can create a way in. Caleb nodded. Here's the plan. Riley and I will disguise ourselves as catering staff to get inside. Diane will hack into the security system to clear a path for us. Once we're in, Dominic will broadcast the evidence on the giant screens in the middle of the gala. Riley held her breath. And when every powerful person in that room sees the evidence, Callaway will have nowhere to run. Diane smirked. Not just that. A few of my contacts inside the FBI will also be attending. If we pull this off, they'll act immediately to take Callaway down. Riley's heartbeat thundered in her chest. She could feel the fire coursing through her veins. For the first time since the trial began, she no longer felt powerless. For the first time, she had a real chance to win. Caleb placed a reassuring hand on her shoulder. So, are you ready? Riley took a deep breath. She looked at the plan, then met Caleb's eyes with unwavering determination. I've been ready for a long time. The cold night wind swept through the towering skyscrapers as the black SUV came to a stop on the street opposite the Regency Grand Hotel, the venue for Victor Callaway's extravagant charity gala. Luxury cars lined up one after another, and guests stepped out in expensive suits and dazzling evening gowns. The press, media, and the city's most powerful figures were all present, ready for a night of charity. But in reality, it was nothing more than a secret gathering of those who manipulated the entire system. From inside the vehicle, Riley adjusted her black catering uniform, trying to steady her breath. She glanced at Caleb, who was testing a small earpiece hidden beneath his hair. In the front seat, Dominic was focused on his laptop, where a detailed blueprint of the hotel was displayed. All right, Diane's voice came through the earpiece from the control center. Ground floor security has 4 guards, but I can disable the cameras for 30 seconds. Riley, Caleb, you'll enter through the staff entrance. Dominic, use the fake access card to get into the technical room. Caleb tilted his chin toward Riley. Ready? She took a deep breath and nodded. Let's go. They stepped out of the vehicle, blending seamlessly into the stream of guests heading toward the hotel. No one paid attention to 2 catering staff slipping through security. Tonight, all eyes were on money and power. Inside, the grand ballroom gleamed under crystal chandeliers. The city's elite laughed and clinked glasses, their polished smiles hiding dirty deals and corrupt negotiations. At the center of it all stood Victor Callaway, impeccably dressed, shaking hands with Judge Warren Hale and several high-ranking officials. Riley's grip tightened around the champagne tray as she spotted Hale. He looked completely unbothered, despite knowing that her trial was shifting in a direction he didn't control anymore. Every fiber of her being screamed to confront him, to expose his crimes right then and there. But she held herself back. Just a few more minutes, and he would be unmasked in front of everyone. Through the earpiece, Diane's voice crackled. Dominic, are you in position? From the control room, Dominic whispered, I'm in the technical area. The files are ready. One push of a button, and Callaway's sins will be laid bare. Riley fought to suppress a smile as she moved carefully through the crowd, her focus locked on the target. Just a few more moments. Then, a voice suddenly sounded beside her. Who are you? Riley froze. A security guard was staring directly at her. Riley's heart pounded. She had only seconds to react. She forced a professional smile, lifting the champagne tray. Champagne, sir? The guard didn't budge, his suspicious eyes locked onto her. I don't remember seeing you on the staff list tonight. Shit, he was on to her. Through the earpiece, Caleb's voice came low. Stay calm, little sister. I'm on my way. But before Caleb could reach her, The guard reached for his radio. "I need to confirm the staff." Bam! Before he could finish, a sharp blow struck his neck. Caleb had moved in from behind, knocking him out in a flash. Unfortunately, a wine glass shattered onto the carpet, drawing the attention of a few guests. "Damn it," Caleb muttered under his breath. "It's fine. We still have time," Diane reassured through the comms. "Dominic, play the video. Now." Dominic didn't hesitate. He pressed the button. Suddenly, the massive LED screen at the center of the ballroom flickered to life. The elegant background music cut off abruptly, replaced by flashing files and recordings. Before the hundreds of guests, a recording played. A voice, Calloway's voice, cold and calculating. "Erase the footage. I don't care if she's innocent. As long as Hale does his job, that girl will disappear forever. Emails between Calloway and Judge Hale. The funds will be transferred to your account. Make sure the trial ends swiftly." A full list of bribed officials, including police officers, prosecutors, and even some attendees in the room. A deadly silence fell over the ballroom. Calloway whipped around, his face pale. "What the hell is this?" The jury, the politicians, the media, everyone had seen it. Some people hurried for the exits, others fumbled for their phones, but all eyes had turned against Calloway. Riley stared at him. He had lost, but before she could savor the victory, Calloway reached into his coat. He pulled out a gun, and he aimed it straight at Riley. He aimed directly at Riley. "You think you can take me down?" Calloway roared. "I built this empire. I won't let a nobody like you destroy it." Riley had no time to react. Bang! But the bullet never hit her. Caleb had thrown himself in front of her. The shot grazed his shoulder, blood seeping through his shirt. Riley screamed, but Caleb didn't fall. "I'm fine," he gritted through clenched teeth. From behind, Dominic stepped forward, gun raised. "Drop the weapon, Calloway." Calloway's jaw tightened, his finger twitching on the trigger. But before he could fire again, red and blue lights flashed outside. FBI and law enforcement stormed in. Calloway was slammed onto the ground, handcuffed. Judge Hale tried to flee, but agents caught him before he could escape. It was over. Riley stood in the midst of the chaotic ballroom, her heart pounding. She looked up at the massive screen, where Calloway's crimes continued to scroll for all to see. For the first time in weeks, she felt truly free. The atmosphere in the ballroom remained heavy after the dramatic takedown. Guests were scattered, some fleeing the scene, others frozen in disbelief at what had just transpired. The relentless flashes of reporters' cameras captured the moment Victor Calloway, the man who once controlled the entire system, stood in handcuffs. His face was pale, his eyes burning with rage and desperation. Across the room, Judge Warren Hale, the same man who had mocked Riley in court, was now dragged away in disgrace, his fall from power evident in the disgusted glares thrown his way. Riley stood at the center of it all, her body still tense from the fight. Caleb's blood stained her clothes, his breathing heavy, but his eyes still burned with fire. "You need a hospital," Riley said, her voice trembling with concern. Caleb let out a weak smirk, despite the pain. "Don't worry, I've survived worse." Dominic, Diane, and Felix approached, their faces alight with triumph. "That," Felix grinned, holding up his phone, "was a masterpiece. The video of Calloway getting arrested is already viral. We just made history." Riley looked around the ballroom, feeling the full weight of what they had just done. For the first time in weeks, she didn't feel like a pawn in someone else's game. 1 hour later, the group had escaped to a secure location, and the news cycle was on fire. Billionaire Victor Calloway arrested on charges of corruption, bribery, and legal manipulation. Judge Warren Hale accused of taking bribes to wrongfully convict the innocent, the city's justice system under its biggest investigation in years. Riley watched the reports unfold, a strange sensation washing over her. This was what she had fought for. But now that it had actually happened, she could hardly believe it. "You okay?" Caleb's voice came from across the room. She exhaled slowly. I don't know how to process this." "Justice?" Caleb asked, studying her. Riley hesitated, her voice almost a whisper. "No, winning it back." Caleb nodded, his expression thoughtful. I get it, but we're not done yet, Riley. This is only the beginning. She turned to him, eyes widening. What do you mean? Diane walked into the room, holding a USB drive in her hand. I think you'll want to see this. She plugged it into the large monitor. A new set of files appeared. We hacked into Calloway's system before his arrest, Diane said. And guess what? He wasn't the only one manipulating the law. A photo flashed on the screen, a shadowy group of figures, powerful individuals Calloway had reported to. He was just a pawn, Felix muttered, his brow furrowed. Someone even bigger was pulling the strings. A cold chill ran down Riley's spine. She had thought Calloway was the final boss, but now she realized he was just one piece of a much larger game. So, what's the next move? Riley asked, her voice unwavering. Caleb smirked. We keep playing this game, but this time we make the rules. The next morning, Riley stood outside the courthouse where Victor Calloway was set to face trial. She stared up at the towering steps, feeling something completely different from the last time she had walked through these doors as a defendant. This time, she wasn't the one on trial. You ready? Dominic asked beside her. Riley took a deep breath. She glanced at the clear blue sky, then turned to Dominic. Not just ready, she said, her eyes blazing with determination. I'm going to make sure no one ever goes through what I did. Caleb placed a hand on her shoulder. Mom would be proud of you. Riley smiled softly. Not just Mom, you too. She took her first step up the courthouse stairs, no longer the wrongfully accused woman fighting for survival. Now, she was the one in control, and Riley Carter's story was only just beginning. 3 days after Victor Calloway's arrest, the city was still reeling from the aftershocks of the scandal. Investigations were launched one after another. News channels were flooded with reports exposing the corruption that had been laid bare. The people cheered, but Riley Carter knew the story wasn't over yet. Diane had been right. Calloway was just a pawn. The real masterminds were still out there, lurking in the shadows. Whitmore? Caleb raised an eyebrow, his expression darkening. No way. He's always positioned himself as a champion of justice. That's what makes him the most dangerous, Dominic said grimly. He's built an image as a benevolent leader to cover up what he's really doing behind the scenes. Riley's gaze fixed on the image of Jonathan Whitmore displayed on the screen. A middle-aged man with salt and pepper hair, a kind face, and a calm, statesman-like demeanor. But now she knew the truth. He wasn't clean. What do we have on him? Riley asked. Diane tapped a few keys, pulling up a new file. He's connected to an international money laundering operation, using charitable foundations as a front. Calloway was just one of his pawns. Then we go public, Caleb said immediately. But Diane shook her head. It's not that simple. Whitmore is 10 times more powerful than Calloway. If we just leak this online, he'll bury it before it spreads. Worse, he might make us disappear. Riley took a deep breath. Then what do we do? Diane swiveled her chair around, eyes sharp. We need undeniable proof, and the only way to get it, Dominic finished her sentence, is to break into his office. The room fell silent. This time, they weren't just going after a corrupt businessman. They were going after the most powerful man in the city. That night, Riley, Caleb, Dominic, and Diane gathered at their secret headquarters, analyzing the data Diane had pulled from Calloway's system. On the massive screen, a list of names appeared. Senators, high-ranking officials, corporate CEOs. These are the real puppet masters, Diane said, her fingers flying over the keyboard. Calloway was just a disposable piece. These people, they control the entire city. Riley stared at the list. And then, one name sent a chill down her spine. Jonathan Whitmore, current mayor of the city. 2 days later, the plan is set. Every detail had been meticulously planned. Diane would remotely breach City Hall's security system, disabling the alarms. Caleb and Dominic would infiltrate disguised as maintenance workers. Riley would break into Whitmore's office and retrieve the data from his safe. City Hall has armed guards 24/7. If we're caught, we'll be fugitives, Dominic reminded them. We don't have a choice. Riley said firmly, the break-in. That night, they moved. Caleb and Dominic passed through security, carrying fake maintenance equipment. Riley entered through a side entrance where Diane had already disabled the electronic lock. The hallway was eerily silent. Following Diane's blueprint, Riley reached Whitmore's office. The door had an electronic lock, but she was prepared. Click. The lock disengaged. Riley slipped inside. The spacious office was dimly lit, only the glow of a computer screen illuminating the room. The safe was exactly where Diane had predicted, hidden behind a painting. Riley pulled out her lock-picking tools and got to work. Every second felt like an eternity. Snap. The safe door swung open. Inside was a hard drive. Got it? She whispered into her earpiece. But before she could move, the office door swung open. Riley spun around, heart pounding. Jonathan Whitmore stood there, staring at her, to face with the devil. Whitmore wasn't surprised. He had been expecting her. "You think you can take me down as easily as Calloway?" He scoffed, his eyes full of contempt. Riley gripped the hard drive tighter. "I don't need to take you down. The truth will do that for me." Whitmore stepped forward, placing a hand on his desk. His voice was calm, authoritative, and menacing. "You're smart, Riley Carter, but you don't understand the game you're playing. I don't just control this city. I am this city." He gestured. 2 armed guards stepped into the room, guns raised. "Give me the hard drive, and I can guarantee you'll walk out of here alive." Riley's mind raced. No exits, no weapons, no way out. Then the alarms blared. Diane's voice crackled in her earpiece. "Riley, cops are on their way. Get out, now." Riley had seconds to react. The escape. She didn't think. She sprinted toward the window. Whitmore's eyes widened. Crash! Riley smashed through the glass and plunged into the night air from the 3rd floor. Wind rushed past her. Below, Caleb was waiting in a truck. Thud! Riley landed hard on the roof of the vehicle. "Go!" she shouted. Caleb slammed the gas, the truck peeling away just as guards opened fire. Bullets whizzed past, but they were already speeding into the darkness. In the side mirror, Riley caught a glimpse of Whitmore standing on the balcony, his face dark with fury. He hadn't expected her to pull that off. The final move. Back at their hidden base, Diane plugged in the hard drive. The data inside was far worse than they imagined. Whitmore wasn't just corrupt. He was involved in human trafficking, assassinations, and global crime syndicate. "Do we leak it?" Felix asked. Riley stared at the screen, her expression ice cold. "No," she said. She looked at Caleb and Dominic. "We're not just exposing him." Her eyes burned with determination. "We're going to end him." The final gambit. The sun had yet to rise, but the safe house was fully lit, buzzing with urgency. Everyone in the room knew their time was running out. The hard drive they had stolen from Jonathan Whitmore's office revealed far more than just corruption or money laundering. Whitmore was deeply involved in a global human trafficking ring, a secretive network that used power to silence anyone who dared to speak up. He wasn't just a corrupt politician. He was a monster in human skin. "We don't have much time," Diane said, her sharp eyes fixed on the screen. "Whitmore knows we have the evidence. He won't sit still." Riley folded her arms, trying to suppress the rage burning inside her. "What will he do?" Dominic slowly placed a newspaper on the table. The front page screamed in bold letters, "Wanted. Dangerous criminal ring. Riley Carter and Associates." Below it were their photos: Riley, Caleb, Dominic, Diane, and Felix. "He's flipping the script," Dominic said darkly. "Now we're not just whistleblowers, we're fugitives." Riley clenched her fists. "He wants us to run, but we won't." Felix leaned forward. "So what's the plan?" All eyes turned to Diane, who was typing furiously on her keyboard. She smirked, a dangerous glint in her eye. "We're going to pull him down, right in front of everyone." 1 hour later, the bait, Diane, finished her work. She sent an anonymous email to Whitmore. Inside was a short video clip, Riley holding the hard drive, standing before a screen filled with incriminating documents. The email contained only one line: "Want to stop me from exposing the truth? Meet me. Tonight, alone, if you have the guts. Caleb crossed his arms, raising an eyebrow at Riley. You really think he'll show? Riley smirked. Whitmore is arrogant. He still thinks he's in control, and that's his biggest mistake. Dominic nodded. But whether he comes alone or not, we both know he won't go down without a fight. Spun her monitor around, revealing a live feed of surveillance cameras and monitoring systems. Which is why, she said, we have a backup plan. On the screen, hidden cameras and live streaming software were already in place. We're not just waiting for him, Diane said. She leaned back, her smirk widening. We're going to record everything and broadcast it to the entire world. Whitmore arrived. As expected, he didn't come alone. 2 armed bodyguards flanked him, their hands resting beneath their jackets where their guns were hidden. Riley, Caleb, Dominic, and Diane stood waiting inside an abandoned warehouse, their hidden cameras and live broadcasting system already in place. Whitmore walked in with the confidence of a man who had controlled everything for years. Impressive, he said with a smirk. You actually think you can take me down like this? Riley didn't flinch. I don't have to take you down. I just have to let the world see who you really are. She held up the hard drive. Everything about you, corruption, murder, human trafficking, it's all here. And after tonight, the entire world will know. Whitmore's smirk didn't fade. Instead, he snapped his fingers. The warehouse doors burst open. A team of armed agents stormed in, guns raised, surrounding Riley and her team. That's unfortunate, Whitmore said, voice calm as ever, because you won't live long enough to do that. The live broadcast. Just as the agents aimed their weapons, Diane pressed a key on her laptop. All across the city, screens flickered. Billboards, news stations, social media feeds. Every single public broadcast switched to one live feed. This moment, right now. Whitmore's face appeared on millions of screens, surrounded by armed men attempting to silence the truth. Welcome to the grand finale, Felix's voice crackled through their earpieces, controlling the live feed from a remote location. Whitmore froze. It took him a second to realize what had just happened. The entire world was watching. The fall of a king. Riley stepped forward, her gaze unwavering. So, Mr. Mayor, what's your next move? She tilted her head. Are you really going to execute us? On live television? Whitmore's fists clenched, his face turning red with rage. You think this will stop me? He growled. Dominic laughed. No, but the police might. At that moment, sirens blared. Outside, FBI and SWAT vehicles pulled up, red and blue lights flashing against the dark city skyline. The trap had been set, and Whitmore had walked right into it. His agents panicked. Some ran immediately. Whitmore? He stood frozen, disbelief written across his face. For the first time, the man who controlled everything had lost. Riley met his gaze. Justice has finally caught up with you, Whitmore. This time, he couldn't escape. 3 days later, the aftermath. Whitmore was officially convicted. Everything he had built collapsed overnight. His network crumbled. His allies were arrested. The city shook from the revelations Riley and her team had exposed. A new beginning. In a small cafe, Riley, Caleb, Dominic, Diane, and Felix sat together, their shoulders lighter than they had been in months. We did it, Dominic said, raising his coffee. Caleb shook his head. Not quite. There will always be more people like Whitmore. Riley gazed out the window. Outside, the city was waking up to a new day, one no longer ruled by Whitmore's corruption. She smiled. That's true, she admitted. Then she looked back at her team, fire still burning in her eyes. But now they know to be afraid, because now they knew there would always be people willing to fight back. Riley Carter's story didn't end here. It was just the beginning. Riley Carter's story is more than just one battle against corruption. Her fight isn't just about a girl standing up against a corrupt system. It's a reminder that justice doesn't simply exist on its own. Justice must be fought for, protected, and sometimes it requires people bold enough to challenge those who seem untouchable. We live in a world where power is often manipulated, where the wealthy and influential can bury the truth. But like Riley, we cannot let fear control us. Because sometimes it only takes one person to stand up, and an entire system can be shaken to its core. So, what about you? When faced with injustice, what will you do? Will you look the other way? Or will you be the one to speak out, even if you're just one voice among millions? Remember, the truth can be hidden, but it can never be silenced forever. If you love gripping, meaningful stories like this, don't forget to hit subscribe. We're bringing you more thrilling stories where justice, truth, and courage are the strongest weapons. Stay tuned for what's next. Thanks for watching. See you in the next story.